All right, so we're doing worksheet 8. I didn't put the name of it on here, but we call this the last. Listen now. The last worksheet was called one-step equations. Guess what this one's called?
Three-step equations.
How about two-step equations?
Oh, not three-step?
All right, so these are two steps. Before, you just did one thing. You either subtracted from both sides, you added to both sides, you multiplied, or you divided. That's all we did on that last worksheet. Not that bad. Now we're going to do a little bit of both. We're going to either like add something and divide something, or we're going to subtract something and multiply something, or whatever. Okay, we're going to do two different things to get x by itself, or whatever letter they use. So let's just start off with a simple one. I'm actually going to do the ones right from the worksheet just as examples for you. All right, so I'm doing a couple of these for you. So here's kind of a basic one. So this is 9x minus 7 equals negative 7. All right, so this is what they're going to say. And they're going to ask you to solve. Every one of these says solve each equation. All right, well, what do you do? Yeah, so let me tell you this first. Everybody's up here. You're trying to get x by itself, correct?
Yeah.
On the last worksheet, there was only one thing that another number was doing to the x. It was either multiplying by it, or it was being added or subtracted or divided. There was only one thing. But now there's two things that are going on with this x right here. It's being multiplied by this 9, and also what? This 7 is being what? Subtracted from this, okay? Here's what you're going to do. Your very first thing that you're going to do, I'll just put number 1. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to get rid of whatever's being added or subtracted. Everybody hear that?
Yeah.
Added or subtracted. So that's what you're going to get rid of first. So let's take a look. Is that 9 being added or subtracted to that x? No, what is being added or subtracted to the x? This 7 right here. Not this 7 over on the right-hand side. It's got to be on the same side with the variable, right? And it's on the what side? It's on the left-hand side. There's the dividing area right there, that equal sign. So it's on the left side. So I'm going to get rid of that 7 first. So Will said add a 7. Why do we add a 7? Because we always do the opposite to get rid of something. So if I get rid of a minus 7 or a negative 7, what do I have to do to it to get rid of it? I got to add a 7. Now, if I do that to the left side, I do that to the right side. Everybody see this? Okay. So negative 7 plus 7, what happens here? Why did I do that? They cancel out. Or they add up to what? They add up to 0, right? That's the reason why they cancel out. They add up to 0. Let's bring everything down. So on the left-hand side, what do I have left? I got rid of that stuff. I got the 9x. Put the equal sign. Bring that down. And what's this going to be?
0.
Right. Negative 7 plus 7 is 0.
9x is the answer.
Is it? 9x can't be the answer because we're trying to find what x is equal to. We're trying to find what x is going to equal. Right? So it's just going to be a number. X is not going to be part of our answer here. Everybody hear that? What I just said? X is not going to be part of our answer. We have to get x by itself. So what is with the x?
9.
The 9. What is that 9 doing to that x? It's multiplying. So you get rid of something that's being multiplied by dividing because that's the opposite. The opposite, think first before you say stuff, okay? You divide by 9 because it's the opposite of multiplication. You'll always do the opposite. Right here, we added because it was being subtracted. That's the opposite. We divided because 9 was being multiplied. That's the opposite. If we do that to the left side, we also do it to the right side. So what happens? The 9 cancels out. Does the 9 become a 0 over here, though? No, it's 9 divided by 9, which is 1, and it's 1 times x. So that gives me x. 0 divided by 9 is 0. That's my answer. If you wanted to, you don't have to do this, but if you wanted to, if you have time left over, I'd plug it back in, just make sure it works. Put the 0 back in for this x right here. What's 9 times 0? 0. What's 0 minus 7? It's negative 7. So does it work? Yeah, it works. All right, that's what I would do if I were you. Let's do this one. We're going to go backwards. So I think this one might be a little bit tougher for you than this one. That's why I did this one first, even though it comes later. Here we go. Negative 6 plus x over 4 equals negative 5. This looks a little more difficult than that one. That's why I did this one first. Okay, this is a little more straightforward, this number 3. Number 2 looks a little bit weird. But let's ask ourselves the same exact questions as what we asked ourselves over here in this first problem. So what are we trying to solve for, first of all? Trying to solve for x. We're trying to get rid of the stuff that's with the x. So what's the first thing we get rid of? We get rid of what's being what? Added or subtracted. Okay, so look at the x on the left-hand side again. Split it up like this. Okay, just look at the side where the x is. What's being added or subtracted to this x? The negative 6 is, right? Everybody see that? What's that 4 doing to the x?
Divided.
It's being divided. So we don't do that first. What do we do first? We do what's being added or subtracted first. We try to get rid of that stuff first. So we have to get rid of this negative 6. So how do I get rid of a minus 6? I add a 6. And then if I do that to the left side, I do that to the right side. That's very important that you understand that you do that first. Everybody hear me? Okay, you got to do that first. Now, technically, you could multiply both sides by 4, but you'd have to multiply this one and this one by 4. That would be ugly. We don't want to do that. Okay, but technically, you could do that. We don't want to, though. What happens here? Cancels out, adds up to 0. Bring this down. What do we get? X divided by 4 equals, what's negative 5 plus 6? Positive 1. Now, this is our second step. That's why they call it two-step equations. We did one step. And then here's our second step. So what is this 4 doing to the x? You said it earlier. It's being divided. How do you get rid of something that's being divided? You do the opposite, which is multiplication. So you multiply by what? A 4. That's right, because that's what we're trying to get rid of the 4. We're not multiplying by an x. We're multiplying by a 4. So I'm going to put 4 over 1. Is that all right? Because 4 over 1 is the same as 4. I got a numerator and a denominator. Now, if I do that to the left side, got to do it to the right side. So what am I going to do over here on the right side? Multiply by a 4. Okay? 4s cancel out. Divide out to be a 1. Times x is x equals. Multiply that together. X is 4. And that's your answer. Easy as that. What do you think? It's not so bad, is it? It looked really weird and it looked complicated at the beginning, but really, was it that hard to get rid of that 4? It wasn't, okay? You just multiply by 4. I know it looks like a fraction, and you're like, oh, I hate fractions, and automatically these roadblocks come up in your mind, all right? But just take it step by step, ask the questions that I've told you to ask, all right? Then it works out pretty nice and easy. Let's do another one. Let me find a good one. All right, let's do number 7. This will be the last one we do. They use the letter V, but I'm going to use X. Now, this is a little bit trickier. It almost seems like what I said earlier about getting rid of what's being added or subtracted is not true. All right, so what you have to do here, though, is this. Now, what's being added to this x? The 9. So you'd think you would subtract a 9 from both sides, right? But if you look at this division, this is super important. So watch. This 3 is dividing both of these things by 3. Everybody see that? So it's like this whole thing is being divided by 3. So in this situation, we're not going to get rid of the 9 first. What do you think we're going to get rid of? The 3, because this whole thing, not just the x, okay, but the whole thing on the top is being divided by 3. So I want to get rid of that 3 first. That's right. We just did this step earlier. It looks a little different than what it did on the last problem, But in this situation, since the whole thing is being divided by 3, I've got to get rid of the 3 first before I can get rid of that 9. So that's a little bit different than what we just talked about. All right. So how do we do that? It's being divided by 3. How do we get rid of something that's being divided? We always do the opposite, which is multiplication. So I multiply that by 3. If I do that to the left side, I come over here and I do that to the right side. Look what happens here. This 3 and this 3 do what? They cancel out. What am I left with? X plus 9 equals, what's that? 8 threes. 24. Now what do I do? That's my one step. Here's my second step. Right, now it's easy. Subtract a 9 from both sides. You know what that is? 15. Right? Because 15 plus 9 is 24. That's it. You can plug it in if you want to. Let's see if it actually works. Put the 15 in there. 15 plus 9 is 24. 24 divided by 3 is 8, just like it was, okay? So it works. I'm not going to make you, I'm not going to force you to check it, but sometimes, if you have enough time, and if you're unsure about it, plug it back in, and if it comes out to 8, then you did it right. Of course, you could plug it back in and do the math wrong when you plug it back in, all right? So that's not always foolproof, but if you did it right, it should work fine. There's one other problem, well, a couple other problems. There's 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's 4 problems like this. So let's do one of these. Let's do number 8. And then I promise we'll be done. Now, this is called two-step, what do they call it? Two-step equations. But actually, this is actually threw another step in here, all right? So they kind of lied to you a little bit, all right? But as far as getting rid of numbers, you're doing 2 things to get rid of some numbers. That's with the x. But you have to, actually, to tell you the truth, now, this very well could be a 2-step equation. This absolutely could be. What's your first instinct, though, when you look at the left side? Distribute, right? If you decide to distribute, it turns it into a 3rd step, okay? But you could do this. What is this 2 doing to that whole entire parentheses? It's multiplying. It's kind of like this, isn't it? Except, what was that 3 doing to that whole parentheses? It was dividing. So I could get rid of the 2 right away instead of distribute, couldn't I? So let's do that, and we'll keep it a 2-step equation. So how would I get rid of that 2? Divide it by 2. You see that? And then take that and divide that by 2. So what happens here? Those 2's cancel. X plus 5 equals -1. So there's my first step. So it is a 2-step equation, isn't it? All right. Now we subtract 5 from both sides. That cancels. X is, what's -1 minus 5? This was on the last test. It's -6. You got to know how to do that. Okay? So that's your answer. Plug it in. Let's see if it works to our original equation. This was our original equation right here. So put it in -6. -6 plus 5 is -1. It's -6, right? So it's -6 plus 5. That's -1 times 2 is -2. It works, doesn't it? Just for the fun of it. No, just wait until I'm done this. Let's take this and let's distribute it and see if we actually do get the same exact answer, just to show you that you could do it either way. All right, but this is going to take an extra step. But let's see if we get the same answer. So I'm going to distribute the 2. So what do I get? 2x plus what? 10 equals -2. And now I could do what? Subtract the 10 from both sides. That cancels. Bring down the 2x. The equals -2 minus 10 is -12. Divide both sides by 2. X is -6, just like it was right there. Oops. When we did it earlier. So you could do it this way, couldn't you? All right, and that'd be fine. I wouldn't mind if you did it that way. As long as you're getting the right answer, you're good to go. But this actually saved you a step, all right, by dividing both sides by 2. What if it was this, though? What if it was 2x plus 5? What was that equal to? -2. What about this? Is this the same as what we just finished doing?
No.
It's not, because that 2 is only being multiplied by what? The x, and not by the 5 here. Jordan? Do you see the big difference here? All right, so having that parentheses is a big deal. So I can't just divide both sides by 2 here. I mean, I could, but then you're going to have a 5 over 2, and that's going to be ugly. You're going to make it terrible, okay? So this and this are two different equations, all right? So make sure that you understand that. You can only divide by, well, yeah, the only way those 2's just cancel out is if you just do it like that, okay? All right, enough of that. Everybody good? So worksheet 8 is your homework, and we'll collect that tomorrow. Yes, go to the bathroom.
Yes.
Yes.